Hello there, my name is Joe Hall, and this is Optimizing for Performance in SEO and Speed. I want to thank the organizers of State of Search for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you today, and I hope you learn a lot from this presentation. So when we talk about page performance, aren't we just talking about speed? Well, that's true, but speed is the primary indicator of performance. Performance drives business needs. Better performing web pages mean higher conversions, revenue, and profit. And so performance should really be at the forefront of everything we do. Otherwise, we're just leaving money on the table and wasting time and effort with marketing. So, does performance or speed influence rankings? Yes, it does. But page speed is a secondary ranking factor. So that means that it's important, but the fundamentals of SEO need to be fixed first. And I say this because I meet a lot of business owners and new clients that are focused heavily on page speed optimization, but are ignoring fundamental SEO issues. And really, you're not going to succeed without those being taken care of. So you should address those first. Increased speeds can help other aspects of SEO, such as crawling and indexing. So we can think about page speed affecting SEO in two ways. One way it can be a ranking factor, which is baked into the algorithm. But another way is that it can increase crawling and indexing, because if your pages load faster, it means that Google can crawl them quicker and index the content on them. So that in itself will help with ranking as well. Now, the priority at which you make these changes or that you optimize for speed for each site should be determined based on the scope of test results and the required investment to improve. And so let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So this is my website, hallanalysis.com. And if we pump it through the page speed insights tool that Google provides, we can see that it gets a 80 out of 100 for mobile and a 98 out of 100 for desktop. 80 is not bad. 80 out of 100 is not bad. Would I like it to be 90? Yes, definitely. But the way I see it is I know there are other things that I need to focus on for SEO. And so I'm going to put my time into focusing on those other aspects of SEO than trying to get a perfect score. Also, when I started out with optimizing my site, I think I was around 40 or 50. And so you can see I've already made a lot of improvement since the beginning, and that's really what matters. So really, you should prioritize these efforts in a way that is a good balance between the required investment and then really where you're at with the testing results. So the practice that we are going to utilize to optimize for page speed and performance is called web performance optimization. And Wikipedia tells us that WPO is, or website optimization, is the field of knowledge about increasing web performance. It's important to underscore field of knowledge here because what you need to understand about WPO is that it is a specialized field of work that requires a skill set outside of the typical web developer. So many developers don't truly understand the value of WPO. And I understand that I can hear a lot of developers watching this right now, rolling their eyes. The truth is that developers that have worked alongside SEOs or developers that have worked alongside digital marketing professionals, they may understand WPO, but web performance optimization is not part of the normal paradigm of building websites. Oftentimes, when you are building a product, your primary goal is to get it done and get it working correctly. However, WPO takes the web development process a step further and says that the process needs to be optimized and performance is at the forefront of everything that's done. And so some of these WPO professionals can specialize in content management systems. So, for example, WPO for WordPress, Joomla, Drupal. They can specialize in business type. So, some WPOs will look at e-commerce, lead generation, or nonprofits. Some can even be specialized in technology. So there's a lot of different things that can be done with different JavaScript libraries like React or Angular, or even some will focus their specialties into like server-side caching, the likes. So, one thing that needs to be understood also about WPO is that it can and should influence other areas of digital marketing other than just SEO. And so a big thing that it touches on is conversion rate optimization. Many conversion rate tools such as A/B testing, heat maps, and conversion tracking can slow a site down dramatically. This is because they usually carry a lot of JavaScript and other code to track conversions and to track different testing things. Social media marketers like to add tracking pixels that can slow down the site dramatically. And social networks are notorious for having things like the Facebook tracking pixel and Twitter's ad pixels. Those can slow things down significantly. Ad sales. This is both if you are a publisher and you have ads on the site. If you're utilizing an ad network, most of those JavaScript assets that run your ad network is going to be external, and they oftentimes are very slow to load. But also, if you are buying ads, oftentimes the network will provide you some sort of tracking pixel to track the conversions of those ads or not. And then also design and content developers need to be brought into the fold as well, because oftentimes they're the ones that are creating new content and adding new media to the site. And if they understand the importance of WPO, it'll make the future growth of the website more sustainable for performance. One thing to take away from this slide is that there are all sorts of different folks and stakeholders that will be touched by the performance optimization process. And so it's really important to try to get them all at the same table and have this discussion together so that they understand the meaningful, the reasons that we're doing this, why this is important and significant, and that they can help contribute to the web performance optimization process in their own way. So sometimes web performance optimization can expose both technical and operational deficiencies. And so a lot of times, I find that sites that are having really slow websites also have a lot of technical debt and also have a lot of operational deficiencies. And I'll give you a good example. I had a client once that was utilizing a CRM system for their lead generation through their website. And it was also utilized for other sales processes within the company. And I worked with them a lot to try to optimize that CRM that was integrated into the website, but it just wouldn't get any faster. And so my last recommendation to them was to get rid of the CRM or to figure out another way to pipe the leads from the website into the CRM, both of which they were unable to do because the CRM they were using was a legacy system and it pretty much ran their entire back-end business operation. And also that CRM tied into their legacy accounting software and really did not provide much room for flexibility. And so because of that, we were not able to make big changes on the website because they were so indebted into this back-end system that was really hamstringing a lot of the WPO efforts. And so sometimes when you're developing these solutions, you can uncover operational deficiencies such as broken workflows that need to be fixed before WPO can be successful. And this is a hard conversation to have with clients, to basically say, okay, you can't really fix your website until you fix your back end business operations. But it is just the reality of it. And in some cases, the best solution is to start from scratch and to build a whole new website that is fast and utilizes fast technology, and can make the site rank the way it needs to. Um, so how exactly do we get started? How do we know if the site is fast or if it's slow, and which direction do we go in? Well, most WPO professionals will utilize some page speed testing tools to look at the different uh, factors that would contribute to fast or slow page speeds. The all of these pretty much do the same thing. They all have kind of similar metrics, but the most widely used and probably the most controversial would be the Google's Page Speed Insights tool. We'll take a look at that for the rest of the talk here. I have a mixed opinion on this tool, but we'll go through some of the tips on using PageSpeed Insights. So my first tip is to do not obsess about the score. Use it as an indicator of progress. So, for example, this 80 out of 100, it could be better, but really what's more meaningful are the scores down here and the information in the rest of the report. So don't focus too much on the score. Use it as kind of an indicator of progress. If the score goes up, well, that's a good thing. Just make sure you don't focus too much on the score itself. You should begin addressing the issues at a high level versus going granular from the start. So a lot of times, web developers or SEOs will pop in a URL into this tool, and then they will immediately scroll down and start, combing through all of these opportunities and diagnostics, and not really have a real game plan or understanding of what's happening at a higher level. But if you take a more higher level approach, it goes a lot quicker, and you will fix a lot of these issues all at once. And a good example of this is to look within the opportunities and diagnostics for recurring themes. So what does that mean? In the opportunity system area here, we have serve images in next-gen formats, eliminate render blocking resources, properly size images, remove unused CSS. This first one, serve images in next-gen formats and properly size images, both of these can be done at the same time. So what you should do is find a method, and I'll show you some tools to use later, but find a method that can convert into a next-gen format and properly size the image all at once. The same can be applied for eliminate render blocking resources and remove unused CSS. Eliminate render blocking resources, a lot of these are going to be CSS. So while we are removing some of the unused CSS, one, we'll be removing some that are render blocking, and then also some of the methods that we utilize to make this CSS non-render blocking will also remove some of the unused CSS. So it's important to view these recommendations at a high level, look for general themes, and try to attack them from the perspective of, okay, what are the general themes? Images and CSS. in the Opportunities tab here. And then, if available, focus more on field data than lab data. So, for example, up here at the top, we have field data and we have lab data. And the field data is coming from the Chrome User Experience Report. And this is a composite index of data that comes from millions of users across the web that visit your website. Now, this type of data is not always available for websites, but the lab data always is. The lab data is coming directly from Google servers, and it's just a reflection of how Google servers interface with your website. The field data is a reflection of how the general public is utilizing your website. So the field data is probably closer to reality, and it helps you understand how your users are actually utilizing the site. So it's a good idea to use field data more than the lab data. Now, I mentioned, it's a good idea to stay at a high level, and Google's made this really easy for us because they've given us 3 high-level metrics that they call the core web vitals. And the core web vitals are the largest contentful paint, and they want that to be under 2.5 seconds. The first input delay, they would like that to be under 100 milliseconds, and the cumulative layout shift, which is 0.1. Now, you're probably wondering, what are these? Let's go through each. What is the largest contentful paint? Well, the largest contentful paint reports the render time of the largest image or text block visible within the viewport. So the underlying goal of this metric is to measure how long it takes for the main sections of the content to load. And so what they look at are the image tags or IMG tags here. They look at the image tags that are found within SVG tags. They look at the video element tags. They look at elements with a background image loaded through CSS. And then they look at block level elements that contain text nodes or other inline text elements or children. So the idea here is they're looking for the main content of the page, how long that main content takes to load. And that can either be an image, a video, or text. Then, after the large contentful paint, they're looking at the first input delay. And now, first input delay is a little hard to understand, but essentially, what this is the time from when a user first interacts with a page to the time when the browser is actually able to begin processing event handlers in response to that interaction. And so this is actually seen a lot of times on mobile browsing. If you've ever been on your mobile device and you're browsing a web page and the page loads and then you try to click something on the page and nothing happens, it's because there is a long first input delay. And what that means is it means that the web browser is having a hard time processing all of the JavaScript and all of the associated assets that are dependent on making the page interactive. And so if you remember on a web page and you click a link or you click something JavaScript, or you even try to scroll and nothing happens, it's because the page is not completely loaded and the browser is not ready yet to support interaction from the user. And so to fix this issue, you need to speed up any external JavaScript resources, or you need to make sure that none of the JavaScript is conflicting with each other. Sometimes you can have multiple pieces of JavaScript on a page that conflict with each other, or you might be overusing JavaScript event handlers, which is essentially indicators within the JavaScript that says, hey, if a user clicks here, do this, or if a user scrolls, do this. If too many of those are happening on the page, it can take a long time for the browser to load content before the page is interactive. And then the last thing we can look at is cumulative layout shift. And CLS measures the sum total of all individual layout shift scores for every unexpected layout shift that occurs during the entire lifespan of the page. So what is an unexpected layout shift? Basically, you might have opened up a web page before, and you may have been reading an article or looking at the main part of the content, and then all of a sudden the layout of the page changes or shifts because maybe an ad loaded or an image that was at the top of the page loaded and it pushed all the content down. This happens a lot on publishers that use ad networks, and sometimes the ads will load on a delay, and those ads will push the content down, or sometimes there's an image at the top of the page, and that image will take a long time to load, and after it loads, it pushes the content down. Basically, you want to make sure that that doesn't occur, because every time that occurs, it adds to the cumulative layout shift. You want to make sure that the page's content does not shift or change after it's loaded. There are 2 tips to improve this: is to avoid delayed or timed events that change the layout. And this can even include like those little hello bars that a lot of people like to use to add like a little banner bar at the top of their page. If you use one of those, just make sure it doesn't come out, after the page is loaded. It should load with the page. And then if you are going to use things like ads on the page, then elements like ads or images should be blocked out within the HTML and have its own dimensions that are loaded in line with the HTML so that there is no layout shift once those ads load. That way, there will be a box for the ad to load into, and the content can load around it, and the content will not be shifted or changed while the user is reading the content. So, I want to stay on this theme of taking a high level overview of these fixes and really focus on it at a high level. And so I've developed a framework that I call Joe's 3-point solution. And of course, this is not going to work for everybody. You really have to focus on, utilizing your own approach and really focusing on what needs to be done. But really, if you take a higher overview approach and focus at the top and kind of work your way down, you can get better results. And I start off my 3-point solution by minimizing the number of requests. You want to minimize the number of files that are having to be called and loaded through the browser. You want to cache everything, and you want to optimize media. And I'm going to show you what each one of these 3 things are really quickly. So when we talk about minimize the number of requests, we can do this by doing things like consolidating CSS into one file. So a lot of times web pages will be utilizing more than one CSS style sheet. But if you can combine those into one file, then that makes just one request for CSS. You can do the same thing with JavaScript. Combine all the JavaScript into one file. Make sure that the order in which the JavaScript is placed in that file is the same order in which it is called on the page, on the HTML. And what else you can do is you can eliminate all these extra requests entirely by using inline CSS and inline JavaScript. What exactly does that mean? Because we hear that a lot with page speed. And I put together a code sample here. Now we can see this first link tag right here. It calls an external style sheet. So if we use this, then that counts as one extra request that's being called. However, we can take the content out of this style sheet and paste it inside the style tag block. And this makes the style sheet inline. So this brings inline CSS so that it's no longer external, and take that out. And now when the HTML loads, the CSS will load right along with it, and there will be no extra extra call for CSS. This is really helpful because HTML typically loads before any other assets, and so including an inline CSS helps with page speed significantly. This will also help with render blocking assets. If you are moving the CSS into inline, then that eliminates the render blocking asset error. The same is true for JavaScript. So we can have an external call to JavaScript, which is an external file, or we can just take all the JavaScript out of this file at myscript.js and place it within the script tags here and put this whole thing with the script tags inside the page for inline JavaScript. And so this can also be done to remove this request entirely. And so let's say you were to do both of those. Now we've taken 3 requests for this page, and we've just taken it down to 1 because we've eliminated the CSS sheet, we've eliminated the JavaScript sheet, all the CSS, all the JavaScript are found now inside the HTML, and the HTML now is the only request that is being made. And that will eliminate a lot of unneeded time that takes for the page to load. So that's why we should always minimize the number of requests. And to do that, we can utilize some WordPress plugins. So all of these do that, but I want to point out Perf Matters because Perf Matters is cool because it can basically eliminate JavaScript and CS on a page-by-page basis. So, for example, if you use WooCommerce, WooCommerce utilizes its own CSS, and it will put that CSS on every page of your WordPress site, whether or not you are, using a shopping cart on every page or not. And if you use Perf Matters, which is a few clicks, it removes all of that unneeded CSS and unneeded JavaScript that would be used for WooCommerce. It takes it off of all of the pages that WooCommerce is not using. And so this is a really handy tool, plugin that you can use to basically focus CSS and JavaScript only on the pages that are using them and not have those JavaScript and CSS being utilized on every page. These other plugins do some similar things. They all combine CSS, like I showed you before, and you can also inline CSS and JavaScript, like I showed you in the code example with these plugins. The second point to my 3-point solution is to cache everything. This means server-side caching, this means browser caching, and this means content delivery network caching. And so let's take a look at some tools here. The first two is for Cloudflare and AWS. They both provide their own type of content delivery caching, and you should utilize that. It's a great feature. It helps access the cache immediately after a DNS call. If you're using like Cloudflare or AWS for a DNS provider, then as soon as it hits the DNS server, it pulls cache right from its own delivery network. So there's no reason to even hit your own server if you're utilizing Cloudflare or AWS. Lightspeed or WP Rocket or Unoptimized, they use server-side caching. So Lightspeed is a server-side caching system that is specifically designed for things like WordPress, Magento, WooCommerce, Drupal, Joomla, all basically content management systems that are written in PHP. Lightspeed is utilized on the server. To utilize Lightspeed, there is a plugin for WordPress, but that plugin has to tie in with light speed that's installed on your server, like your hosting environment. And so a lot of hosting providers utilize Lightspeed because it works so well and it's fully integrated into the system architecture. WP Rocket is another great option. You do not need a special hosting package to utilize WP Rocket. It comes with its own server side caching system that works as a plugin. The same exact caching system that WP Rocket uses is utilized by WP Engine. It's the same exact thing. In fact, if you use WP Rocket on WP Engine, you'll notice that the caching uh, does not work because it doesn't need to. It uses the WP Engine's caching instead. But the other functions on WP Rocket, when utilized in WP Engine, work just fine. And then finally, Auto Optimize is another awesome tool. It's a free tool that's utilized. It also has its own server side level caching and also utilizes a bunch of other features as well. Um, so next up is the last point in my 3-point solution is optimizing media. So you should always compress images and videos, upgrade to the latest image formats. So there are numerous ones for animation, the WEP P images. There are other JPEG 2000. Those are all kind of advanced and future driven file formats that are designed for speed and downloading the images quickly. And then also you should definitely lazy load all images and iframes. Whenever I mention lazy loading iframes, people are like, "Gosh, who uses iframes anymore?" Well, actually, every media host utilizes an iframe for embedding media. So if you're going to embed a YouTube video or you're going to embed pretty much anything, iframes are still utilized for that. And so if you lazy load the images and the iframes, that drastically cuts down on page load speeds. You can utilize other options for optimizing media. So Imagify is very good for converting images, file formats, and compressing them. I also really like Smush Pro. Smush Pro is great because it can do all of your images all at once. It's another WordPress plugin, and it works off of a credit system, I think, where you buy so many credits and you can optimize so many images based on that. So if you're approaching this where you need to optimize like 800 to 1,000 images, Smush Pro is a great choice for that. The other plugins, Lightspeed, WP Rocket, and Auto Optimize, they all integrate with third-party services that can do this through their plugin. So you'll have to pay an extra fee for that third-party service in order to implement those image optimizations. So that brings me towards the end of my presentation, and I had top 3 takeaways, and those are that performance and speed optimization influences all parts of the business, and so therefore you should try to include all the different stakeholders that are involved, and also understand that it may influence business operations as well. WPO is a specialized practice that takes time, planning, and investment. So this is not just a checkmark item on your SEO checklist. This is not something that you can get done in a week or 2 weeks, and it is not something that you might be able to do with your current developer. It may require a specialist. And then it's important to focus on high-level reporting such as the core web, the web core vitals. Focusing on these high level ideas and high level reporting is going to help you not only save time, but really make sense of what matters. I thank you so much for watching this presentation. My name is Joe Hall. If you have more questions, you can, I guess, ask them now or maybe later. If you have more, feel free to reach out. My website is hallanalysis.com, cloud22.com, or you can reach me on Twitter at Joe Hall. Thank you so much.